I'm from Manufacturing Advisory Service. We have 80 advisors, and this is just not about MAS, it's about subsidising clients, manufacturers to do innovation. So we have 80 advisors. They're going to visit 4,000 manufacturing companies, and they're going to do projects. We're going to give them notified state aid to do projects. Some of those will be innovation type projects. And I've got some information from you, Andrew, from your presentation. I just wondered if anyone could put that into context. Any examples would be good where they've been funded by a notified state aid or any other state aid, and it's called complexities, and what's been resolved. Any examples?
But sorry. So what we talked about, or what Andrew talked about in the presentation, was where you have notified state aid in respect of a project, none of that project's costs can be claimed under the SME R&D tax relief scheme. So that's the problem, if you like. But then the question is, what do you mean by a project? So, and that's the complexity from what you're talking about. So it's about saying someone might start with the whole project is to develop a brand new piece or to improve from version 5 of Microsoft to version 6. But it's about how you ring fence what those sub-projects are and exactly what's being funded by the notified state aid. Okay. So if you like, one of the things we advise on is to be as clear as possible in your grant funding of exactly what the grant is for.
Yeah, that's right. It's drawing the boundary in such a place that it's quite clear what the funding is for, okay, and that's a separate project from additional development work you do separate to that. So although those rules are quite scary and do look sometimes like they knock things out completely, hopefully some of the areas where we can help is by helping companies to define things in such a way that it will still work for them.
Draw the boundary as tight as you can to enable the funding, which is precisely what we were talking about earlier on in terms of some of your activities.
One of the myths that I think hopefully Andrew's overcome today is that if you get any form of funding, you can't claim any tax credits. I suppose it does limit whether you claim the large scheme or the SME scheme or the large scheme. There is still relief there. But I suppose for any companies that are either loss-making and going to be loss-making for the foreseeable future, they want to get themselves into the SME scheme and get the repayable credit if possible. For those that are going to be profit-making in the future, then being in the large scheme is not as beneficial, but it might not be the end of the world.
And could I make a plug at that point, which you touched on, Andrew, about the above-the-line tax credit? Because this is some really good news for companies who were restricted potentially by that notified state aid issue, because at the moment they can't claim a tax credit. So they'd be in a loss-making position, they just get extra tax losses, and there might not be any cash benefit till a number of years down the line. What's proposed is that from the 1st of April next year, large companies or SME companies under the large company scheme would be able to get cash back at a far reduced rate to the 25% Andrew talked about. But it's worth, if you've not considered the scheme for those reasons, it's worth kind of keeping up to date with those proposals, making sure you know what's going on, so that you will be in a position to get that cash.
Can I just add? Sorry, I think there is just a point about the introduction of that scheme, because at the moment the government are saying that it will be for accounting periods starting after April 13, which delays it by another year for us. I know that's something that you're involved in the discussions in, Andrew, but I know there's quite a lot of debate about that at the moment, whether or not that can effectively be brought back to April 13.
Yeah. The other thing just to mention about that is that I suspect a lot of advisors that don't deal with R&D credits on a regular basis might potentially miss the point that effectively this isn't just large companies that this is going to affect. This is going to affect SME companies that are doing work on a subcontract basis for large companies. And those companies need to be aware that, yes, certainly if they're going to go down this route of effectively accessing this credit, it is going to affect their accounts. So you need to be working with accountants, or at least making your accountants aware that if you're going to go down this route, they need to look at or monitor the proposals as they're going through, because it's not fixed at the moment, it's still in consultation, and there's various options that are being considered in terms of how that accounting is going to work.